Hi friends, it's Ashley and welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be a themed cozy fantasy reading vlog, and I just love doing like themed reading vlogs because they're just so much fun, and so I'm really excited for this one. And so in this one I'm going to be reading cozy fantasy books with green covers since I am starting this video in March, and when I think of March I think of St. Patrick's Day and all things green. And so that being said, the first book I'm going to be starting with is How to Lose a Goblin in 10 Days by Jessie Sylva, and this is cozy fantasy that just came out this past January and it sounds absolutely wonderful. So in this one we are following a halfling named Pansy and a goblin named Wren, and they each inherit this house, but little do they know that they both inherited it. They expected like to have the whole house to themselves, but that turns out not to be the case, and they're not happy about that. And so they end up making a deal with each other where they both are going to live in the house together, and whoever is driven out of the house first forfeits ownership of it. And so our story goes from there. It also says on the back of the book that they are going to be threatened by a common enemy, and so they're going to have to learn to trust each other and convince goblins and halflings to band together to oust the intruder. And so this just sounds like it's going to be so cozy and delightful. Hi, so I'm here to update, which has been like a week since I last updated this vlog, and partially that's because I just got off of a 6-day work stretch, and I'm just really bad at updating vlogs on work days, but I have made quite a bit of progress in this. So I have made it to chapter 15, page 246, and I just been adoring this book. It's been so cozy, so delightful, and this has just been the perfect book to read after a long work day because it's just like so cozy and relaxing. And I remember there was one day during my 6-day stretch where I came home and I was just like so tired, and I just like snuggled up on the couch with a blanket and this book, and this book just like relaxed me so much and made me smile so much. And at that point in the book, I was like at the point where our halfling Pansy and our goblin Wren are like starting to become friends. They're starting to get over their prejudice towards each other, and they're finally starting to work together. And I just love that moment, and just made me so like warm and happy that they were becoming friends and developing a bond. And so in the beginning of this book, our two main characters, Pansy and Wren, they are kind of enemies by default because they have preconceived notions about each other's races. For example, Wren and other goblins just believe that halflings are too loud, too wasteful, and too impulsive. And then on the flip side, Pansy and the halflings believe that goblins are thieves and are evil, horrible creatures. Part of this is because goblins did work for the Dark Lord in the war, and so they were on like the opposite side from the halflings. And so some of that prejudice does come from that. And so all this leads to them making their deal about whoever can get the other one to leave the cottage first will be the one who gets full ownership of it. And so in the beginning of the book, they're doing like all these little things to try to get on each other's nerves and to drive the other one out of the cottage. And those scenes were just so fun and amusing to read. And the two of them are using like their preconceived notions about the other's race in order to try to get on each other's nerves. And then while like those scenes are fun and that part of the book is really fun, the book doesn't draw it out at all, because I feel like if it went on for too long, it could have got like a little annoying. But I feel like the amount of time that it goes on for in this book is just right. And also the way the book uses these scenes as well, it also kind of uses it to subvert the stereotypes that they have about each other's races. And similarly, I also like how the book takes the common like trope of goblins being evil and horrible creatures and turns it on its head. And it ends up painting them in a very different light from most other forms of media that they're depicted in. And in here, they're very much kind and misunderstood creatures that other beings like with more power and means have taken advantage of. And then on the back of the book, it does talk about the two of them having to come together to defeat a common enemy. And that hasn't happened yet, but I feel like it's just about to happen. And I do think I know who that common enemy is going to be. I'm not going to say it so as not to spoil anything, but I think I know who it's going to be. And so I'm very interested to see all that play out. Hi, so it's been like 4 days since we last spoke, and in that time I have finished How to Lose a Goblin in 10 days, and I've also started and finished another book. So this one, I end up absolutely loving this. I'm giving it 5 stars. This book is very character-centric, and I loved both our main characters, Ren and Pansy. They were both very well-developed characters with layers, and I also loved the romance and relationship that blossomed between them. And speaking of that, their romance is a clean romance. There's no spice in here whatsoever. It's just very wholesome and cute. And so majority of the book was like them getting to know each other and overcoming like their prejudice towards each other. But the last 50 pages of this book does have some drama and action that happens as well. And so like that was very exciting, and I like flew through the ending of this book because of that. And this book very much has cottagecore vibes, which I loved. There is cooking, there is baking, there are animal companions, there is gardening. And so I definitely think this is a good book to read in the springtime. But also, that being said, there are also some fall vibes in this book as well. So there is a harvest festival in this book, and there are pumpkins in this book. And so I feel like this is a good book for either fall or spring. And this is a standalone, so everything does wrap up in the end, and I was very happy with how it ended. And that being said, there are side characters in here that I think the author could write a story about if they really wanted to, and I would totally be here for that. And overall, I just love this, and this book definitely left my heart feeling full and a smile on my face at the end of it. So after finishing this one, the next book I picked up was Myths and Manuscripts by Pandora, and I read that one on my Kindle. And that one is the second book in a series, but it's the type of series where it's made up of interconnected standalones, so you don't necessarily have to read the first book to read this one, though I would recommend it because it does take place in the same world, and also the main characters of the second book are introduced in the first book. And the first book is called Legends and Librarians, and this one is about this magical library that brings storybook characters to life and brings them into the real world, and it follows a librarian that is restoring this library after it has been abandoned for many years. And I did read this one in another reading vlog, so I'll link that reading vlog down below if you want to know more about my thoughts on this one. But it was super cozy and whimsical and just like a really comforting read, and very much felt like a love letter to libraries. And it did also have a romance, and the romance was very much a clean romance, no spice. And then the second one I adored just as much as the first one. I gave the first one 5 stars. I'm also giving the second one 5 stars. And I actually feel like the plot and the main characters are stronger in the second one than they were in the first one. And so Myths and Manuscripts is dual perspectives like the first one was. And our main female character in this one is Willow, and she is an apothecary but also an aspiring writer. However, she ends up receiving criticism on the first book that she wrote that ends up making her feel depressed, and she decides that maybe writing isn't for her after all, that she doesn't have the talent, and so she decides just to focus on running the apothecary shop that she runs with her grandmother. And then another thing about Willow is that she is kind of afraid to get close to anyone, to fall in love, because she's seen how much it hurts when something happens to someone that you love, and she's seen that through like her grandparents when her grandfather passed away and how it affected her grandmother, and also she lost her parents at a young age as well. And then our other main character and our male love interest is the Demon Lord. So he is one of the book characters that the Magical Library brought to life. And his series is a really popular series, but the main character in his series is actually the hero, and so he's the Demon Lord that the main hero is trying to defeat. However, before the series could be finished, the author unfortunately passed away. And now the family of the author is holding a contest to see who can write the final book in the series. And the Demon Lord is very worried about how the series is going to end and like what it's going to do to his character. And his character actually hasn't been like on page or actively in scenes yet. He's kind of just been mentioned. And so he himself doesn't really fully know who he is yet as a character either. And he is very like worried about who is going to end up writing his book, and he doesn't want just like any person to write it. And so he actually ends up wanting Willow to write it because he trusts her to do a good job. And at first Willow is reluctant to do so, but then something happens and she ends up getting trapped in his story, in the world of his book. And so our story goes from there, and you get to see Willow learning more about the demon world, and I really like the turn that the story took in that regard. And overall, the story was just very wholesome and heartwarming, and there was also animal companions and baked goods in this one as well, which I feel like always adds to the coziness of a book. And there's also talking magical pens in this world, which I just thought was so cool. And like the first book, the romance in here between Willow and the Demon Lord is clean with no spice, and it's just really cute and wholesome and sweet. And since this is standalone, everything is wrapped up nicely in the end. And at the time of filming this video, there is no mention, no news on a third book in the series, but I'm hoping we do get a third one because I'm just loving this series and how cozy it is. And so the next book I'm going to be picking up also on my Kindle is Tusks, Tales, and Teacakes by T.L. Stone, and this is another series of interconnected standalones. And this one is described as a scoop of high fantasy, a spoonful of Hallmark rom-com, and a generous sprinkle of cottagecore coziness, which just sounds absolutely perfect to me. And the beginning of the description for the book also just exudes coziness. And it says, "Welcome to the Tusk and Tail Tavern, where the fire is always crackling, the meat pies are rich and savory, the air is filled with laughter and bard song, and friends are like family. At least it used to be." That just sounds so good. And so I'm gonna go start reading this, and I'll be back once I have some thoughts. Hi, so I've finished Tusks, Tales, and Teacakes, so I'm here to give my final thoughts and wrap up this video because this vlog has been going on for way too long because I started this in March and now it's the beginning of May. So I very much enjoyed this book. I'm giving it 4 stars. It had all the cozy vibes, although I will say the beginning of it started off kind of on the uncozy side. So our story starts off with our main female character, Lyra, leaving her adventuring party after some things happen. And so she ends up returning home to her small town village. and she doesn't plan to stay there. She's only going to get a certain item and then to leave again. But when she goes to retrieve the item, she finds out that where she buried it, which was in the basement of the Tusk and Tail Tavern, that there has been a wall built over that spot. And so now she's in kind of a pickle. And so some other things end up happening, and she ends up getting a job at the tavern. And so her, along with a dwarf named Sass, who ends up starting work at the tavern at the same time as her, start to fix up the tavern and bring it back to life, because this tavern has fallen onto hard times. And so it used to be a place full of life and patrons and laughter and joy, but now it doesn't get many customers and it's just kind of fallen into a state of disrepair. And part of this is because the owner of the tavern, his wife passed away, and she like did all the cooking and brought like a certain warmth to the place. So now it's up to Lara and Sass to revitalize the tavern, while Lara also tries to figure out how she is going to get this item that is now behind a wall. And so this book had like all the cozy vibes and all the cozy things in it. There was baking, which I always love when there's baking in my cozy fantasy books. And this book made me so hungry. Like all the things that Lara made, I wanted to bake and eat them. And actually at the end of this book, there are recipes for some of the things that Lara bakes in the book. And I made the scones, which you saw in the B-roll before this, and that was my first time like ever making scones, and they were so good. They're just like simple ones with cinnamon in them, but they were just like so crumbly and melt in your mouth, and I'll definitely be making them again. And then in addition to Lara, there's also a halfling baker in the town as well who bakes things that also sound super delicious. And one of his recipes is also at the end of the book as well. And then in addition to baking, there's also cute magical creatures, and one of them actually helps Lara in the kitchen and has some baking knowledge, which was really cute. And then there is a romance in here, and it was super cute and sweet. It's and wholesome. There's no spice involved. It's between Lara and an orc that she actually grew up with and knew in her childhood. And the romance plays a very small part in the story, but I still like loved it so much. And also, I would say like the friendship and the found family elements in here actually play a greater role, I feel, than the romance. And both the friendship and found family elements in here were immaculate. And the town itself, even though it's fallen on a little bit of hard times, everyone there is just still so welcoming, and it definitely has like warm-hearted, cozy, small town vibes. And that even though there are like all these cozy elements, there is still also a bit of a mystery going on as well that does bring some action and some excitement to the story. The story did remind me like a lot of Legends and Lattes, so if you enjoyed that book, you will probably really enjoy this one as well. And so with that, we've reached the end of the video. Let me know down below if you read any of these, what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!